Hi everyone, my name is Górska and today I have a pleasure to talk with Monika Kostera, who is the author of a new book, How to Teach Management Differently, De-Management from Teaching Objectives to Teaching Values by Edward Elgar, and I very much recommend the book. So, Monika, it's lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Often when we read critical management studies or critical university studies, it is all it is, critical. But this book is very different. It doesn't just criticize the current state of teaching management. It offers and shows a different perspective, an alternative. Take us inside the book. What is in it? What the reader will actually find in the book?
Well, you just explained. The general idea is that we already know what's wrong. No, most of us do. There's been much critique and many critical perspectives during the last at least 25 years. And I guess most people, most academics are either tired or even burned out by not just the conditions that are deteriorating actually, but also the critical tone adopted in many publications and many contexts. We're tired of commenting on what's wrong and reflecting on things that are difficult or even impossible. And in many circles, there is a tendency, I think, to start thinking about the new things, the new ideas, the new solutions that could be adopted after things have changed. Of course, first they must change. There must be a space for these new initiatives. So in order to start creating something viable, something really sustainable, we first of all, we need space for doing it, conditions. This book is slightly different because it suggests a few things that can be done even though these conditions are not quite where they aren't there, plainly.
Your subtitle uses the term of de-management, and I'm sure that our readers and observers may ask, so no management at all? What is it all about? How can you explain de-management?
Well, it's a neologism, of course. It's created like the well-known word degrowth, and it is slightly similar, but also different, because with degrowth we mean the cessation of growth, of quantitative growth. And there are several people, like, for example, philosopher Bernard Stiegler and his followers, who suggest that this should be replaced by qualitative growth. So instead of doing more things and consuming more things, we should focus on the good life, on goodness. And similarly, de-management is about less quantitative management, less indexes, less figures, and less the superficial successful results. However, of course, the focus needs to change to higher quality, to better management. And perhaps we need to look back on the original definitions of management. For example, Henry Mintzberg, who speaks of management as taking responsibility for something, for the organization, for other people, for strategies, for the consumers. Generally speaking, more responsibility. So my neologism, demanagement, it suggests not just more quality, less quantity, but also a movement, an active movement from the one to the other, because this word in French means moving house. Déménagement. This means moving from one place to another place. Refocusing. And the changing of perspective, but also another kind of rootedness. One needs to find different roots, a different place to work from in order to be able to think in terms of values instead of objectives.
Mm-hmm. And exactly, what are those values instead of objectives? When we talk about the business schools and teaching management, we know exactly what are the objectives of management. Efficiency, excellence. We know about productivity. We talk about different management of resources, including human resources. But what is those values that we should be teaching instead of the objectives that are highly quantitative with a highly one vision of success? What is your stance of those values?
Well, I'm a systems theorist. Because of my education and the teachers that I've had, my supervisor, Professor Kosminski, was one of Poland's main systems theorists in management and the founding father of Polish systems theory. And among the principles of system thinking, perhaps even the first principle is to be able to deal with complexity. The world is not linear, and solutions should not be linear. They should not simplify reality. Quite the opposite. We should be looking for solutions that are as complex as the reality that we can perceive. So this is what I suggest by looking at the teaching objectives as they are now. So this is not, as I said before, this is not a book about the future. I would love to write a book about the future, and I probably will at some point, but this is now. This is what we have now. But even though these objectives can be read differently, in a more complex way, and addressed from that more complex perspective. So, for example, as you said, we all know what our teaching objectives are and learning outcomes. For example, some of them are really good. Some of them are worthwhile, such as sustainability. It's a learning objective that is quite popular in many countries, especially in Scandinavia. And it can be read in a way that suggests quantifiable effectiveness, but it can also be read differently, as I propose here, as life, the appreciation of life. And there are many examples, not just in philosophy or sociology, but also in a strictly managerial context. There are organizations, there are successful enterprises that focus on this value. And you have some, I think, good case studies to illustrate that in the book. And likewise, the other objectives that I mentioned here, and I don't list all of them, of course, people are able to do that themselves, to translate these objectives into values. But for example, communication skills, they can be translated into cooperation, deeper bonds between people, or motivation. Instead of just talk about motivation, and we often lose the focus of what it really means. We can start looking at work as a value, as something good and something very human, and try to involve that value or engage with that value in our teaching. I know many people who actually do that all the time. So this is not something that I've invented. It wouldn't be worthwhile to read something that I've invented. It's rather a record of my lived experience, things that I've really seen, things I've read that other people have seen and researched, and things that generally, well, work. Maybe not in the center. These are not ideas and solutions that are extremely widely spread and dominant and well known. These are marginal phenomena, but they work and they give energy, not just take energy from us and from our students.
The book is dedicated to very different audiences. Of course, the teachers, PhD students that are just learning how to teach management probably for the first time, but also those who are very well experienced in teaching, trainers, deans. If you could recommend just one thing after reading the book, one thing that they could implement right away to their teaching. They read the book, take it next week to their class, what would it be?
I would recommend testing one of the thought experiments. Mm-hmm. There is a thought experiment following each chapter, and it's something I do when I teach with my students, and they are generally, I must say, very positive towards this method of teaching. It's an ancient method. It's been used everywhere. It's about creating an imaginative situation and addressing it as an alternative, which is very important nowadays, to think in terms of alternatives, to find new ways of dealing with problems, because if we don't do that, of course, the general trends are not at all optimistic. So thinking in terms of alternatives and training the ability to think both critically, analytically, but also synthetically, that's a way of thinking that is missing these days. The thought experiment is a method that addresses all of them. So I recommend a few that I've tested on my students successfully. The one that I perhaps would recommend to use first is the one I describe in the chapter about decision making. How to make decisions more reflectively. It's chapter 3, mm-hmm. And it doesn't. You don't need a lot of things or a lot of resources. The only thing that is required is attentiveness. So I ask my students to observe a well-known setting, like the room where they're working, for example, or some other place that they are very familiar with, for 15 minutes without doing anything. Just focus on it and try to find things that they haven't seen before, something. It can be something very small, like a trace on the wall. Or it can be something big, like the sound in that room. And then the next 15 minutes they dedicate to describing it, either in words or taking a picture or just thinking about it. And it's really good because you don't need any advanced technology for it. Quite the opposite. You don't want any advanced technology to be used here. But instead, you sort of find both or retrace your ability to perceive, to think, something we all had when we were kids. Life was so infinitely interesting. Everything was interesting, except for having to follow what the adults are doing.
Follow the rules.
Yeah, follow the rules. That was boring. But apart from that, everything was fascinating. So find that ability again. We all have it; it's given, and to give oneself the space, not to be drawn into contests and linear thinking about effects and results and about being evaluated and things like that, which are very tiring. But give oneself the freedom to just be in one place. And then the other part of the experiment is about discovering how much this gives, because this opens up new horizons, and it really does that. My students always come back with something more than just stories about I don't know, sounds and traces on the wall and stuff like that. They come back with actual perspectives opening in the mind, alternative modes of seeing and thinking. So this is probably something I would recommend.
I would also recommend it very much. I have to be honest. When reading the book, I was in the middle of writing my another book. And at some point I got stuck. And when reading it, I was like, okay, let's try this thought experiment. I sat down in silence for 15 minutes, started to look around my room that I know so well, and try to find something new that I have not seen before. And it worked. I found something, and then I just started writing, and something mentally opened up, and well, it didn't completely just opened me up for writing articles now, but it helped me to get in the mood of being grounded. That's the word. It grounded me in the presence, in the reality, not allowing my mind to wander all over the place with all the different rules and obligations and things to do. So this is also a great writing technique, not only for our students, but also I would highly recommend it for us to be back in the reality and not somewhere in our made-up world sometimes.
I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you for telling me about this.
Before we close, your endorsements are striking. You have so many wonderful words written about the book, and I completely agree with them. For example, Carl Rhodes calls it a must-read for educators who want to make a difference. Martin Parker has this wonderful phrase, read this book and demanage yourself. What do you hope that the readers will feel when they finish the book?
I'm infinitely grateful to all people who read this book, because, to be quite honest, that's why we write, don't we? Writing isn't, in a way it is a solitary activity. We sit there, we focus, we try to engage with ideas and with thoughts, but that's not what it is all about. The point is having a conversation, and you can have a conversation with people in a room like we have now, which is great. But you can also have a conversation in this form. And this is what happens when you write. You converse with ideas, with people who've written interesting, engaging books, such as the authors that you cited, Carl Rhodes, Martin Parker. They've inspired me a lot. Not just inspired me, but they said things that I feel I need to react to. And this book is born out of these reactions that I constantly have. This is a conversation that is ongoing all the time. The academic conversation, it's a state of not mind but of being, even for us academics, to be inside this conversation constantly. So to answer your question, I hope that this will be another point of sort of reflection, or maybe even, well, why not, resonance for other people who will feel the need to react to it and either talk back and write books, other books or texts, I don't know, or do something like talk with their students, have an interesting class where they do completely new things, or they regenerate some ideas that they had before. So yeah, that's my dream, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Monika, so much.
Yeah.
How to Teach Management Differently is now out with Edward Elgar, and I highly recommend it to all the teachers, all of those who impact what the teaching looks like. You know, we have never been taught, most of us at least, we've never been taught how to teach. Some of us are pretty tired of this traditional way of teaching, and I believe this book gives us the alternative, shows how to look at teaching in a very different way, on how to use different methods, and how teaching, success, management can be looked from a completely different perspective. This is a book that can genuinely change of how you think about teaching management and how you do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And one more thing. There is a picture on the cover. It's a picture created by a Polish artist, Karolina Matyjaszkowicz. And it's a big painting in oil that she did after having read a fragment of the text. So perhaps this is one of the resonances that I love the most, but it's also something that's worth taking a look at, the image, the joy, the sharing that's expressed by it, the two women with apples dancing. Thank you again so much for having me here.
If I may finish with Martin Parker's quote, happy demanagement.